Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth, Wisdom, Freedom Conversations. I'm really excited to have here Bríd Hanlon, who is based in the UK, and we're going to be talking about healing with quantum frequencies to recalibrate the mind, body, and emotions. Hello, Bríd. Welcome.
Hi, so nice to be here.
It's really nice to have you. And we've had many conversations about alternative healing and quantum healing and frequencies, information field healing, and all of these different modalities, which you are a specialist in. And to give you guys a little bit of a background about Bríd, she's been in this field of alternative work and personal development, spiritual development for the last 20 years or so. And she is a person centered counselor as well as a homeopath, and she is a very experienced Timewaver quantum healing specialist. And I've had the fortune of working with her in that regard and receiving therapy from her. So maybe you can start by sharing with us a little bit about how you got into frequency, quantum, information field, all of that. What is that? And how did you come into it?
I think I have to start first by talking about my training in homeopathy, which really laid the foundation for my understanding of what the life force is, for example, and opened up that whole area of knowledge that I wasn't aware of. Even homeopathy seemed to happen for me by accident. And of course, there are no accidents. I discovered it 30 years ago when my daughter was little and suffered with chest issues, asthma. She was diagnosed as. We didn't want to go down the route of inhalers and things like that. So we tried lots of things, and it wasn't until we found homeopathy that we saw a real difference straight away that she started taking remedies. She was about 3 at this point. I studied a little bit and I was wondering, how can sugar pills that don't seem to have anything in them materially apart from the sugar, how could they make such a difference to something that had been going on for a couple of years?
I think you may have to preface a little bit about homeopathy and how it works, because some
Yes,
people may
sir.
not be familiar about
Yeah,
these sugar pills
yeah,
and the
good,
dilutions.
good. I'll give an example of the homeopathic remedy that helped my daughter was called pulsatilla. And that's a plant. Many people grow it in the gardens. It's quite beautiful. And how the remedy pulsatilla is made is by taking the tincture of that plant, the herbal tincture, but diluting it so much. And with each dilution, there's a shaking, a succussion, it's called. The dilution goes way beyond what we call Avogadro's number, 10 to the minus 23, where there is no longer the possibility of any molecules left in the substance, in the liquid, the carrier, which could be water or alcohol or a mixture. So scientifically, it's known there's no molecules of the original substance, and yet the effectiveness of the cure, the ability of that plant to cure chest issues, for example, increases the more you dilute it. It goes against our normal conception of what's possible materially. And it was Hahnemann, Dr. Hahnemann, way back in the 1800s in Germany, who discovered this phenomenon. Actually, he wasn't the first. He had been trained in the writings of the Greeks, and there was the phenomenon of not only like being cured by the opposite, which is allopathy, but there was also mention way back of like being treated with like, but nobody had experimented with it until Hahnemann took up the idea and experimented. From there, homeopathy grew, and I heard about it and discovered its effectiveness and then decided to train as a homeopath. The other thing that inspired me to train was because at that point I was already working as a person-centered counselor. And I was really, really wanting to make a difference to people that I was meeting. Many had post-traumatic stress for one reason or another. And the counseling was effective, but it was slow and steady. And as I studied homeopathy, I realized we could be wasting time here. There are remedies like aconite, like stramonium, that can shift a state of trauma within the body far, far, far quicker. And then roll on about 5 years or so. And a really, really close friend in Germany who used to come and stay regularly with me in London said that his homeopath friend in Munich had found this new technology called Timewaver, which works within the field, the information field, to analyze a person's patterns, conscious and unconscious, and is able to align the person more clearly with what they want and make adjustments within the field. We'll talk about the field a lot later. Make adjustments within the field so that the person is more easily able to manifest what they want to manifest by clearing what's in their field that isn't helping them and enhancing what would help.
I like to visualize the information field like a force field, an invisible field of energy that informs our physiological being, our mind, our emotions, the way we act, the way we behave. And in some healing traditions, from my traditions, from yoga, from shamanism, we call it different names. Sometimes it's the Akashic, right? Some people know it as that. Some people know it as just the electromagnetic field. Some people know it as other things. It's known by other names. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about what is the information field from the Timewaver point of view and how it affects a person.
I think I want to read a quote from a lady called Beth McPherson because it's so beautiful. I attended a lecture of hers earlier this year. She said, "We and all of material reality exist within a sea of unlimited energy and information. Not only do we exist within it, but it exists within us. And each of us is a unique manifestation of this limitless sea." So this is an unseen field, obviously. And it's one that probably the vast majority of people are totally unaware of. We're aware of what we can see and feel. We're aware of our physical bodies and the physical objects around us. People who have a spiritual upbringing may, especially, for example, I know people in India and China, for example, find it very easy to accept the notion that we exist within a field, that there is something beyond the physical. Beyond the seen, there is the unseen. Quantum scientists also explored this and would explain it in a similar way.
When you're speaking about Eastern cultures versus Western ways of thinking, more contemporary ways of thinking, there really is this split between the more rational and the logical, wanting to prove everything to a point, versus this acceptance of something larger than you could possibly ever know. In Western ways of thinking, we've been very much trained growing up in science class and mathematics to see the world through a certain lens, and it's very dualistic. It leads to the allopathic way. It's this combative, conquering mentality. Homeopathy, which is using like and like to heal in a very diluted way where it's almost like it doesn't even exist, is mind-boggling to the Western way of thinking. And Western science has actually proven that it actually works, right? And that's kind of the beauty of it. How can we use information and technology like something like Timewaver Med to show people that physical phenomena or physical ailments, disease, discomfort comes from something that is more unseen? So how I work with people is I help elucidate the fact that they might have certain emotional stories, limiting beliefs, intergenerational karma, or stories that have been passed down from generations and generations of unconscious behavior that has now manifested in them, and that is causing something physical within them, and then getting them to unravel that, and then something shifts as a result. We're not trying to get rid of the ailment or the discomfort or the physical whatever, if it's insomnia or whatever it is, but we're trying to create the conditions for health by acknowledging all facets of their being, their mind, their body, their emotions, and looking at all of it as it is versus avoiding it, which is very much Western culture. So maybe you can give us a more scientific lens of how we can do this with technology, with quantum science, quantum physics.
I'm just wondering how much detail I should go into with the science of it. I'm going to talk about Marcus Schmick a little bit and his journey, and bring into that the scientists that he worked with to get to the point where he was able to create the technology that can access the information field So Marcus was both a very gifted student of physics and mathematics in his teens and studied quantum physics at university, but also he was very spiritual, like innately desiring to answer big questions as to the nature of the individual. You know, who are we really beyond the personality? So he went to India and he became a monk and studied for 11, 12 years there, and then came back to Germany and started to work with Burkhard Heim, a mathematician, very, very gifted mathematician, who was also interested in spirituality and had mathematically worked out the proof of the existence mathematically of not just 3, 4, 5 dimensions, which is quite easy to work out mathematically. He had gone up to 12 dimensions. He worked with Marcus on a joint idea of creating a physical device that could access these higher dimensions. Marcus also heard about a Russian astrophysicist called Nikolai Korzhev, who by that stage had passed, but his son worked with Marcus on developing a smaller version of what Nikolai Korzhev had created, the Korzhev mirror. And that is also a way of accessing the higher dimensions. So what Marcus then did was create Timewaver device, which has within it a small Korzhev mirror and a quantum sensor, a photon generator. I don't think I should go into too much of the technical details, but the quantum sensors in the Timewaver Med device work in conjunction with a database of 500,000 entries that have been developed by psychotherapists and doctors and life coaches and biochemists in Germany that map the human experience. And what happens when a client comes for a Timewaver Med session is that, first of all, the quantum sensor records a signature vibration of their consciousness and their energy field. It records a pattern of vibration, which it then uses to compare against each of the elements in the database.
Is it recorded in waves? Is it recorded in some other way?
The vibrational pattern is a wave. If you visualize a wave, there's the midpoint, there's the higher point and the lower point. How that wave is measured or recorded is through the propulsion of photons against a semi-transparent mirror in a very fast, very intense pulse. And the resulting pattern of whether the photons, they could either pass through the mirror or be reflected. So there's just two possibilities, 0 and 1. We get a binary chain of numbers. That chain can easily be translated into a wave pattern. So we record the wave pattern of the consciousness and energy field of the client initially, and then we test and see, according to the client's intention, according to what they want to achieve, which we discover through conversation with the client. How do the elements in the database compare with the client's signature vibration? And we see those elements that are either resonant with the client or dissonant with the client's intention. And where we find resonance, we can enhance that aspect. And where we find dissonance, we can work to reduce that aspect.
So what you're suggesting with a particular unique energy signature that or vibrational signature that each person has, you're suggesting that we can use technology to measure almost thought waves that people have, the kinds of emotions they're emitting off of their body, off their organism, that if they feel angry or if they feel really depressive, that can be measured in a very particular wave pattern and it can be shown. And then that is your energy signature in the moment. And does that shift ever? And does it shift often?
Yeah, it's really good you asked that question, because I think there's a slight misunderstanding in the sense that what I said was that we record one initial measurement and then we compare our phenomenon in the databases to that one measurement, which doesn't really change. What it allows is us to see what gross patterns of habitual thinking this client is subject to. not moment by moment what they're actually thinking, but what patterns of thought and belief have given rise to who they've become right now, and to the symptoms that they have developed. So we're able to trace back the origins of the current state.
Could you give us an example of perhaps a case study, just an easy, quick one, so that we have more context to understand?
Yes, yes. A year ago now, actually it's nearly 2 years ago, in January, a lady came to me who for 6 months at least had not been able to eat whatever she wanted to eat. Her digestive system had gone out of balance, and she was so constrained in the types of foods that she could eat. So she couldn't go, for example, easily just out for lunch or dinner. She had to plan everything and mostly cook herself. That was her main issue. And we did analysis within the psychological databases of Timewaver. And we found beliefs and thoughts systems that she was subject to, limiting beliefs. And we set up a treatment where over the course of 4 weeks, I vibrated into her field, because this is the other thing that Timewaver Med is able to do, not just analyze, but then treat by sending signals into the information field. 4 times every day, we sent a list of stimuli into her field that were intended to reduce those influences, those anxieties, limiting beliefs that she was carrying. By the time I saw her the second time, she had reached a point where she was able to eat whatever she wanted to eat. It sounds unbelievable, but it was true. She could not believe the shift in the space of a few weeks. She came back a few months ago, a year later, and still it's the same. She has not regressed back. There was some blocks in her, you could call it her unconscious, that were causing her digestive system to malfunction, basically. And once we were able to shift using quantum information field technology, shift what was influencing her from the field, she got back a connection with her, what I call clear blueprint for health.
This was a psychosomatic root cause of her not being able to eat something. And so for those of you
Yes.
listening who are not familiar with that term, psychosomatic, psycho meaning of the psychology, somatic, soma meaning of the body, so that the psychology of someone can directly influence your physical biology. And in this case, you're referring to how her psychological conditioning somehow in the unconscious, not dealt with,
Yes.
had caused her to not be able to digest certain foods. And by addressing the energy of her psychology, you were able to help shift that belief, whatever that was for her, into something that was more harmonious so that she can then digest food again.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. Very cool. Very cool. And what's even more amazing is that we didn't even pinpoint it is this that's causing it. We allowed the technology to come up with a list of perfect vibrations for her to connect her back with her life force, her clear connection with the field, removing all of the blocks, and it worked.
How does this work more specifically? Because there's a certain field around the thoughts or the emotional patterns that are then affecting the fields around her stomach? Because I know there's something called morphic fields. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how your psychology could affect your body, your physical body.
Yes, indeed. So first of all, we need to understand that the physical body has itself manifested from the field. The physical body didn't just appear. It manifested in this physical form according to a set of information and energy that is coming from the information field. This is why it's sometimes called the morphogenic field. The English scientist Rupert Sheldrake studied plants with the question of how do the different parts of a plant know to become a leaf or a stem or root or whatever. And by studying them in detail, he discovered the existence of a morphogenic field around each plant that was communicating with the plant in a two-way process. It turns out our bodies have formed in the exact same way. There is in the field for each of us, as soon as we're born according to a set of instructions. or information. This, what we call a blueprint. This is influenced by our genetics. It's influenced by the time and place we were born. It's also influenced by our soul, which has a record, a memory of all of our lifetimes and all of the choices that we've made. So we manifest physically out of this sea of limitless energy, which Nikola Tesla called it the ether. He said it's like a sea of vibrating energy, vibrating at infinite velocity. From this sea, certain aspects slow down and eventually manifest physically, but they manifest not randomly. They manifest according to a set of information. Each of us has an ideal set of information to guide our physical bodies on how to function.
I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far about quantum healing and frequencies to heal the mind, body, and emotions. I wanted to take a moment to pause before we continue because this is actually related to what we're talking about. So I'm offering for the rest of the year a free 30-minute chakra analysis report. And this is coming from bioresonance healing frequency technology that, like what we were saying, uses biophotons and measures the light around the field from a distance. We don't have to be physically in person because the information field is non-local, meaning we don't need to be physically present in order to access it. And using that technology, we scan into the different colors that are surrounding each chakra that have a very particular emotional story that might be impeding you from behaving or just existing in your most optimal state. So that could be physically optimal, mentally, emotionally. So if you're interested in getting a 30-minute analysis report of your chakras and to also get a distance healing of your chakras, please visit my international calendar that translates time zones, and you can book a time at go.oncehub.com/Johnson Chong. That's go.ohncehub.com/JOHNSONCHONG. I love doing chakra analysis for people, so if this calls to you, take advantage of it. And without further ado, let's get back to the conversation. So we have these morphic fields, right? That are communicating with other parts, other systems within our body. There's fields around our brain, there's fields around our stomach, around our kidneys, and all these different parts. And they're communicating moment to moment.
Yes.
So if we're, let's say, out of balance with our original blueprint, I'm kind of imagining, this is a very silly image as you were talking, like a IKEA set. And sometimes there's those tables and dressers, and then there's that information pamphlet that tells you how to put it together. And it's like, you have to use these tools. So then if that's us and we're born with a set of instructions, and let's say we go through life and we put the drawer where the top of the table is supposed to be, and it's all messed up and it's backwards. And we made our IKEA dresser upside down, topsy-turvy, because we didn't read the instructions. We were influenced by what other people think, their expectations, what society wants from us, what we think they want from us, and all of this kind of stuff that plays out in our life, right? So if that's happening and we're not following our original blueprint, then what went wrong? Why aren't the morphic fields resetting themselves by themselves naturally? If we were all born with the blueprint, why can't the blueprint just say, hey, this is not the right way? Why do we always, as human beings, need some sort of intervention from an outside source, from like a therapist, from someone like yourself to step in and go, hey, you're not in your most harmonic vibration. Stop.
Beautiful.
Why?
Yes.
Why does that happen?
Yes, I actually don't agree that we do need anything, that we do need any technology. I believe that if we would just stop, if we would just be still, then we begin to tune in again to the unseen intelligence that is guiding us. The intelligence is always there. The problem is we're not hearing it. Now, a small child, hopefully, ideally, is in perfect connection with the divine blueprint that's laid out for that body. The healthy child then has got great energy, emotional freedom and expression. It's just how it's supposed to be. But as you said, things happen to us as we go through life. We suffer trauma, we are exposed to toxins, we get certain strong diseases like viruses and bacteria that really do take their toll on the human body. All of these things, including the emotional trauma, especially when it's suppressed and not dealt with, as you say. What happens is the effect of those creates a kind of static so that we're not able to hear the connection and the communication from the field that would, given a chance, would guide us every step of the way. So there are two ways, at least, of approaching things. Anybody, and there are lots of people who do, say, no, I know I just need to be still. I just need to overcome the sense of panic and fear and the looking outside of myself for the answer and go inside, connect again with the intelligence within all of us. Sometimes it's useful to have another person to help you to do that, another person to help you connect with that. And I believe that's what Timewaver does.
That's
In the
great.
most
So,
simple, unintrusive way. It doesn't involve years of therapy and discussion.
right.
It's much more simple and quick.
I've personally had experiences with this, right, with what you're saying. And I think to kind of allow the audience to understand a little bit more, we kind of have to appeal to the thinking, logical mind. So I'm going to ask you another question because it's making me think about goals and intentions in the way that it is predominantly approached in modern culture. So, what do you think about modern goal setting and modern intention practices? Because if people are making goals and intentions not from a place of stillness and not connected to the original blueprint of what the information field has intended for their life experience, so they're not in harmony, then is that harmful? Should those people not be making those types of goals? How does making a goal or intention out of integrity, how does that affect the personal mind body connection? And how does it also affect the global information field? Because, as you're talking about the personal information field around each person, there's also one around everyone, around all of us. So, what is the
Yes.
correlation there? What happens?
Okay. So first of all, what I heard in your question was, is there a wrong way to create intentions? Could we be wasting our time? Is there a quicker way? And what came to me as I heard that was, you know what? Every step we take is important. Sure, we may go down some paths, which at the end of it, we realize, oh, okay, this is a dead end. I'm going back. Those choices I made were not so good. But you know what? That's part of our journey. What I would say as a good measure of what is a goal, a suitable goal, is, does it make your heart sing? Does it light up your heart? Does it make you feel excited, genuinely excited? Is it what you really want? Are you able to ask for what you really want? Do you know that you are worthy of having what you want? Then you can't go wrong. Some people might say, oh, but it's not okay to be selfish. Actually, you know what? We are here to express our unique individual selves. And it's through our desire that we get to express that best. So tuning into our desires, I think we can't go very far wrong. What would I really, really want? And keep refining it and refining it and refining it.
And let's say if we are not pursuing that desire, our deepest, truest dream, because I can think off the top of my head some cases of people that I've worked with where I've seen a physical correspondence to them not pursuing their true desire. I've seen certain physical discomforts and ailments and physical postural things that have been trapped and causing them discomfort issues day to day, and them having to then come closer in contact with their true purpose actually helps to alleviate that. Do you have
Yeah.
any
Oh,
stories off the top of your head of people who have had this mind body disconnect of purpose, lack of
yes.
following their purpose leading to physical disease?
Absolutely. I see it all the time. But by the time I see people, usually they've already got that they're not following their heart. If they haven't fully gotten present to that, I don't mind taking time to get them present to the effects of their choices. Not that there's anything wrong with choices that we have made. Absolutely not. Judging them and feeling guilty or regretful is not useful. But getting somebody to just become aware of the effects of choices, more aware of it, even if it's uncomfortable, is important. Then seeing that we always have choice. We always have choice.
What
Whether
kind of
we
consequences have you seen in the body that if someone did not follow their purpose?
I cannot say for sure, and I'm not usually so focused on tracking what causes what. I always look at the global, the whole picture.
Hmm.
Mostly what I look for is to what degree is the life force able to flow through this person, or to what degree is it blocked and suppressed?
Hmm.
That is the most important thing I got from my homeopathic training. Conversely, what is the effect of any intervention that we give, whether it's a homeopathic remedy or a Timewaver optimization in their field? What is the effect on the life force? And how you measure that is, does the person feel more connected with who they really are?
You're not really caring about the root cause of,
They,
oh, okay, you have a autoimmune thing, you have a thyroid thing, you have a skin thing. It's more about for you, is energy flowing?
I know that when
Okay.
energy flows, those blocks that have manifested in the physical body will have a knock-on effect, and they will disappear in time.
Right.
That isn't to say that the person may need medication in the meantime. Absolutely. I don't suggest they stop medication. And if they do, especially for hormone issues, I ask them to do it in conjunction with their doctor and do it very slowly. But I see it all the time. I see improvements. Somebody who came a month ago with liver report with lots of fatty liver and enzymes not correct levels, within 1 month of Timewaver treatment, her liver is now properly functioning with a second blood test. But what I've been working with her on, a little bit on the liver issues, but mostly how happy is she? To what degree is she following her bliss? To what degree is she expressing herself and having her basic needs as a human being met as best she possibly can? How can she continue to do that? So I
That's
look
a
at the big
very
picture.
different way of looking at health versus how
Yes.
it is by specialists and doctors in modern medicine. So, what do you account for this difference between conventional and I would probably put this under a branch of unconventional science for optimal health and vitality and well being? So, why is there such a difference between how you or any sort of homeopathic or holistic practitioner would look at health and disease versus how a doctor in a hospital would look at disease?
Just to define the difference clearly, is that the way I'm trained and the way I work is to understand that the body has within it a template for health. We only need to get the body back into a clear communication with that template. We can trust that we developed after all of these millions of years of evolution with an intelligence for health within us, innately within us. Secondly, I come from an approach that sees us as one whole being, not just the sum of individual parts that can be treated separately, can be separated out and studied individually. We can't. It's so clear now that the way that the medical system operates of separating out appointments here in London, you make an appointment for one issue only. And if you have two issues, you have to make a second appointment just to discuss the second issue alone. So that kind of defines the approach in Western medicine. It doesn't define the approach in African medicine where I lived, not at all. There are many other examples around the world of the unity of the body, mind, and emotions.
So, we're really talking about
So
duality versus unity principles here. And this is more of a philosophical lens of looking at treatment. And so, maybe you want to expand a little bit about that.
science, as it has developed over the course of the last few hundred years, went down a route of focusing on the material only, what could be seen and felt and observed. And that became, there was an imposing of that worldview on our educational system, as well as on how we see our bodies and how we treat our bodies. We haven't been educated in the bigger picture at all, not in schools, not even most religions don't really take the time to go into the metaphysics. They teach practices, but they don't teach children about connection, about unity with the divine, with the unseen force from which we all manifest. Therefore, it's difficult for people. It's more easy for people to put their trust in what they've been educated to believe. But things are changing. Of course, things are changing.
Do you believe
And
that the future of medicine and of treating disease has to adopt a more spiritual approach to looking at things?
I think it has to adopt an approach that works. From a pragmatic point of view, it has to adopt an approach that works. And in those countries where medical treatment is not free, like it is in the UK, people in the UK especially are less likely to go to alternative practitioners because they have to pay, whereas the National Health Service is free. But in countries where it isn't free, many, many, many people choose to go to the doctor who can make them better. I use that phrase carefully, but it's results that count at the end of the day. In those countries where medical treatment has to be paid for regardless of whether it's alternative or not, then people vote with their feet and they go, when they have suffered side effects of medical drugs with no relief from the original problem, then they go to alternative practitioners. And I'm not saying all alternative therapies work or all therapists are good. Obviously, people have to research and choose, but it causes people to really look at what, at the end of the day, gets results. I think that's going to have an influence more and more and more as the Western medical system is running out of options for lots of things.
It's wonderful what you're doing with all of the work that you're doing in the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic realms, and bringing it all together in a cohesive way. Because I think when we think about healing and about disease and the mind and the body and the emotions, we don't often associate those things with a physical ailment. I actually know people who don't see things that way. The people that don't adopt that view that the mind, the body, and the emotions are interlinked have the most physical issues that I find. You know, that they tend to complain a lot about hormonal imbalances, they have autoimmunes, they have a lot of things that seem to be a conundrum in Western medicine, and no doctor seems to be able to point out what actually is the root cause and what's happening, because there seems to be this perspective that the world is out to get them and that they're a victim of disease, versus how you've been talking is really about cultivating the conditions for health that is already wired into our original blueprint and tapping into that so that all of it's aligned. It's kind of like a rose, isn't it? Like when a rose blossoms, it's not just one petal that comes out, it's the whole thing is simultaneously expanding. And I think that Western medicine tries to do it a piece at a time, which doesn't, it's not quite the full picture, because life doesn't bloom one petal at a time. It's the whole thing, right?
And Western medicine is not encouraging the life force, not that it needs encouragement, it only needs unblocking. Western medicine is not doing anything to unblock the flow of the life force. And therefore, it cannot have those amazing, unpredictable effects where the person comes back saying, not only, I remember a lady who had low functioning thyroid, and I gave her sepia, and I also sent sepia through the Timewaver med into her field. And she came back and said, not only have I got my mental functioning back and I can actually work in the evenings rather than just sleep, but I feel myself again. I remember who I am. And the joy in her face to get back that sense that she had lost of who she is. Those kind of results, somebody who's just prescribing thyroid medication is never going to see, even if the thyroid starts functioning well. Some symptoms reduce, but that feeling of remembering who you are, that bonus, isn't available when you just use drugs.
And there's also a numbing agent to it as well. I mean, it reminds me of me and my cold sores, right? Because, you know, we worked with my cold sores and I had that frequency treatment. and it was downloaded into my portable Healy device, which is the baby of Timewaver for those of you who are listening. And so I'm able to treat myself with this very particular therapy program of frequencies and microcurrents that Bríd has made for me specifically for my cold sores. And I remember that I didn't have my device for about 3 weeks because I had lent it out to a friend, and I had a case of cold sores, which really hurts when you're trying to drink things, or if you eat something sour or like a lemon and it gets into it, it cuts and it burns, right? And it was for 3 weeks it took for the cold sores to kind of heal. However, when I had my frequency program, it only took a couple of days, and then they just disappeared because the
Yes.
energy behind the cold sores was addressed from the information field, from the invisible, the unseen, and then the physical repaired itself quicker. All that you're saying is that energy that's not flowing, that's been kind of blocked by this dam, that gets broken up so that the energy can pass smoothly, and then the body kicks in and it naturally heals itself. We're naturally wired to heal, and I think we've forgotten that.
It's so regrettable that we have been educated in fear and to see ourselves as victims or possible victims, and that we have to fight this and fight that. Everything is a fight against something. It's so regrettable because that wastes a lot of energy and it doesn't allow us to be freed up, to be creative. I mean, ironically, the immune system is at its best when we're not fearful. Mhm. To have a view of the physical body as something that's so prone to attack from this and attack from that isn't intelligent. It's more useful to think, how can I optimize myself physically? There are lots of things to do. We all know what's good for the body. But how can I optimize myself emotionally and mentally as well? How can I do it? Because nobody else is going to do it for me. There's no doctor I can pay who's going to do my exercise for me or drink my celery juice every morning for me. You know, we have to take responsibility for the consequences of our choices. And that's what we're not encouraged enough to do. As a whole, we're becoming more aware, and I am an optimist, absolutely an optimist, and I do believe that we're making fantastic progress as humans in our awareness of who we are as spiritual beings, not just physical bodies.
Yeah. And I think for those who are listening, if you think back to your own life, and if as you're talking, I'm thinking back to my own life, that when I was a younger person, a child and into adolescence and teenage years, I was a very emotionally repressed kid growing up. I had a lot of stuff going on about my cultural identity, my sexual identity, a lot of confusion, a lot of self deprecation, a lot of animosity towards my parents, towards the world. And I got sick a lot. I would catch a cold, a really bad one, like twice a year. Sometimes it'd be a flu. I would get strep throat. I would get that almost every year, to the point where it would be 3, 4 weeks I'd be out. As I dove more into working out the emotional stories, more of the spiritual work, the inner development, and taking care of that blueprint you're talking about, my connection to my purpose, I don't get colds like that. And I don't get strep throat. I don't experience those types of things anymore. And I think that people who are feeling physically not optimal, there may be some blind spots that they need to look at. So, is there a way for people to reach out to you if they would like to connect with you?
Just before I tell you that, I just want to say, of course, when anybody is not feeling physically optimal, the first thing they need is love and care and attention from themselves and anybody that they can reach out and help them. And then in the long term, of course, people need something more than that so as to prevent the recurrence of these things. Yeah. So I have a website called brídhanlon.com. My name is Irish. So Bríd is not written as it sounds, it's BRID. And you'll see on there that I do Timewaver, med, and frequency consultations, but also soul contract readings, which I adore because that also helps the person remember who they are. It helps them to wake up to what they're here to do, their potential. All of my work is to give people back that ability to express themselves fully as they were meant to do in this lifetime. Because with it comes health and happiness and vibrancy.
I love that
Yeah.
mission, and I love how you're contributing to society and to the world with everything that you're doing in all the alternative healing modalities that you practice. And once again, if you'd like to connect with Bríd, it is BridHanlon.com. Bríd Hanlon.
But I'll
Yeah.
just say quickly as well,
Yes.
remembered every Sunday in the UK, it's evening time, 7:30, but wherever you are, GMT, 7:30, every Sunday, I do a divine healing meditation for 1 hour. And that starts with a deep meditation and then goes into an opening prayer and whatever I'm guided to do on each evening, bringing down healing energy to all of the people who are present and all of the people who listen to the recordings afterwards. So anybody can come on that. Thank you, dear.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights and your sharing. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you. I will talk to you soon. Have a lovely day. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. To access these talks live with bonus content like weekly guided meditations and even more live talks, join me in my private Facebook group called Truth, Wisdom, Freedom for Conscious Leaders. Also, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode.